thank you very much for accepting our invitation. We are here with Ditte Juul Jørgensen, Director General of DG Energy at the European Commission. We are going to discuss, and to start with you, a new podcast series, Lights on Women W Factor. And we look forward to discussing with you about the energy topics that we are going through today. And particularly, I would like to start with, I would say, quite difficult question. We are living a very dramatic period with the energy crisis and particularly after the brutal invasion of Ukraine from Russia. We have seen so many changes, of course, first of all in the life of people, the victims, but also in the impact that this really dramatic crisis had on the energy sector everywhere. In Europe, we had several measures. The European Commission reacted very promptly to address both the emergency, but also, let's say, having a longer term, medium long-term perspective on how to mitigate the effects of this crisis. So I wanted to ask you, how do you evaluate the work so far? Are you happy? And are we prepared now to this winter and the next winter in particular?
Thank you very much for inviting me, first of all, and thank you for the good question to start our talk. So I think you said something very important at the beginning of your question when you spoke about the war that Russia is waging in Ukraine and the impact it has on people, because first of all, this is a war on people. It's a war on women, on children, on men. And so that is the perspective within which we are working also when we work in the energy sector. So I think it's very important that you brought that out. Then as you've also said, the war has had a very significant impact on the global energy markets and on the energy sector. And of course it has had an even more significant impact on the European energy markets and sector, because we were so highly dependent on Russia for our fuel supplies, in particular fossil gas, but also oil and coal. And so very, very significant impact. And so to your question, if I'm content with what we've been doing and how do I see the situation as we go into a challenging winter, I would say my first point is I'm very impressed and proud by my colleagues here in DG Energy. People have been working really, really hard, and they've been doing an amazing job to make sure that we respond to the crisis, that we do what is necessary for Europe and for Europeans, but also for our neighboring countries. But they have also been working a lot to continue this our work towards our strategic objective of the energy transition and climate neutrality. And so I think my first point really is how impressed I am from what I've seen here, working with colleagues in DG Energy, but also working with our colleagues in member states and in the European Parliament. We've had a very, very close cooperation to try to do the right things together for Europe. So that would be my first point on that. In terms of the readiness and preparedness for this winter and beyond, I think looking into this first winter, so the 22-23, we have our storages at full. We've passed a storage regulation. Member states have filled up their storages. It's now around 95%. So that is above normal and very, very impressive and above our targets. We have put in place demand reduction. We have put in place revenue caps on electricity, a demand reduction in electricity. We've put in place solidarity mechanisms. We have done a lot of preparedness exercises, really looking at are we ready both in gas, electricity, and do our instruments work, not just on paper, but also if they have to work in practice. We've done a lot on the supply side, getting additional supplies via our energy platform, working with our trusted suppliers. So yes, I think we have done a lot together, and I think we're probably as prepared as can be as we go into this winter. That doesn't mean it won't be difficult, because it will be difficult. There's a lot of unknowns, but I think we've done probably as much as we can to prepare now. And so I think what will be important will be, first of all, that we maintain this unity within the European Union. We've got councils coming up, and we've got decisions still to be taken, and so important to stay together and achieve the best results. We're now also looking at market mechanisms and prices and financial stability, so a lot of different issues coming into play here. So that unity, that working together. And then the other thing is we need to look ahead to next winter, the winter 23-24, because the gas storage filling season starts already in March, April. And so that is really where our focus now should be. We know that there will be most likely a supply gap. We've been working with the International Energy Agency to assess how much is the gap, and with the network transition system operators. So we need to assess the gap, but also look at, okay, where do we get those supplies? Because we've lost a lot of Russian gas.
Russian gas.
Yeah,
it's,
exactly,
the
exactly.
Most, difficult challenge to replace that.
Exactly, exactly. Absolutely. But what I think is interesting and has been interesting this year is we have had over the last years a 40% dependence on Russia for fossil gas. And in the beginning of the year, when we launched the Repower EU strategy as a response to the war, but also as a response to the fact that Russia had disrupted supplies, people would say this is impossible. The EU cannot become independent. How will the EU manage without Russian gas? And if you look at what we've done this year, we have actually managed to lower very, very significantly that dependence. So we're
right?
Exactly. We're below 10% this last month, and so it's a very, very significant shift thanks to demand reduction, energy efficiency, thanks to more renewables coming online, accelerating that, and then thanks, of course, to alternative supplies from other suppliers. So it's been quite a. When you look back at what we have done together with colleagues here in DG ENER and with our commissioner and with the president, who has very much been, of course, giving the political steer to this, I think we've done as much as we can for now.
Absolutely. If we look back, the situation was much more difficult and challenging even 1 year ago. Yes, I fully second that. You talked a lot about unity, Ditte, and I really like that because I think it comes, unity and solidarity are working together, no? They go hand by hand. And my next question is indeed on solidarity, because you rightly pointed out that solidarity, unity will be important ingredients of the recipe, which will hopefully help us mitigate or even solve the crisis. The Energy Council has released a proposal specifically addressing solidarity measures, complementing the existing ones. So there is no doubt that solidarity is something that we all should desire, and that is something that should be really a fundamental element for Europe. But how can we translate the concept of solidarity, which is sometimes a little bit abstract or theoretical, into something concrete? Can it be applied in the energy sector? Why? How? And is it something that can be left at member states, or maybe the impulse should come really from Europe? What do you think?
I think it's a very good question, very, very good point. Both your points about unity and solidarity, they belong together. They're two sides of the same coin, and we need both. And then solidarity is a necessary concept, it's a necessary part of our energy policy. It's already part of our energy policy, but the translation can be difficult. What does that mean in practical, concrete terms? So we have a security of supply regulation in place already, and solidarity is one of the principles in that security of supply regulation. And the way that is meant to be made operational is that member states should negotiate bilateral solidarity agreements so that they agree, okay, how would they help each other? If there is a disruption, if there is a shortage in one member state, this is how your neighbor or your neighbors would help you. What we've seen is that it's been quite difficult to negotiate those agreements. So even if there is an obligation to negotiate them, I think we have only 6 agreements in place out of a total of 40 possible agreements. So in other words, there are some obstacles. It is difficult, and I think it's for the reasons you point to. What we've done in this latest proposal that is now before the Energy Council, before ministers, is to try to say, okay, if you don't manage to negotiate an agreement, then this is the default agreement. Exactly. This is what would come into play. And so we made that proposal, and we've had good discussions with member states and council, and there's now an understanding, an agreement on the text and on the text. So there is in principle an understanding of what would it mean if there is a shortage. How do you help each other? How do you make operational this solidarity? So, but it is, as I said, really a central point of our energy policy, of our security of supply policy, and making it work requires a lot of technical work as well, because it's also a question of where can the gas flow physically? It's not just a legal principle, it's very much also something that has to work in terms of infrastructure and flows and molecules, and so. It implies
taking responsibility, right? So when you engage in solidarity agreements, you are responsible for what you do. So I think this is really amazing, and it's in the developing path, really interesting to watch. Let's go back to women now, which was the original point I made at the beginning. So women are indeed powerful agents of change. We see it regularly, we see it in our daily work. You are widely recognized as a powerful woman who has an impact, and not long ago you were even formally appointed as one of the women who shaped the Brussels agenda. So what is your W factor? What do you bring to what you do, to your work? What's your desire when you work with your co-workers? What would you like to leave with the people who work with you?
Oh, these are good questions. First of all, thank you very much for your kind words. I really appreciate that. I think maybe a couple of more general points first. Now, the first is, I think as co-workers, as managers, as leaders, whatever we do, the first thing we bring is ourselves. We are who we are, and we try to make the best out of that also in the workplace. And if we try to be someone else, it's not going to work. The thing we're best at is to be ourselves. So better be ourselves and really try to make the best possible contribution from that. So I think the first thing is simply that personal element really matters also in the workplace in terms of how we work together, how we develop relations, how we listen to others. So that is a first point. And the second point links to that, which is that, of course, is both men and women.
Yes.
And I guess one point is for a workplace to function, it has to be a human workplace. And a human workplace means that they're both men and women, because human beings are both men and women. And so by definition, it cannot be it cannot be a full place that reflects human beings if it is not both men and women, and by the way, more diverse, more generally, so that it reflects human beings. And so I think that aspect of having not necessarily a perfect balance between men and women, but making sure that everyone is represented and everyone goes to work and feels comfortable being who they are, because again, if they can be themselves, that's how we can each of us contribute in the best possible way.
Absolutely. So creating the conditions. Absolutely, I fully agree. You correctly said that in the energy sector there is an underrepresentation of women.
Yes.
This is testified by data, and
yes.
it's something that we all hope will improve in the next years. What do you think can be the reason so far for keeping women outside of the energy sector? Is it something that is a structural issue, or is it more because women so far would not feel able to contribute somehow for whatever reason to the energy sector, because maybe they would see it too complicated or for any other reason? What do you think?
That's a very, very good question. And I think it's important that we actually do some more reflection, because you need to identify what are the obstacles, what are the bottlenecks in order to remove them and overcome them. So I think it's a really, really good question. I think one element is that you have sectors that are traditionally male or female, and so that links back into structures deeply rooted in our culture and tradition and history. So that goes very, very deep into the societies. And it often goes so deep that it's invisible, because you simply take it for granted. That's how it is. And so we need to make those invisible biases or invisible factors, we need to make them first visible, because only once they're visible and recognized can we start addressing them. So I think that's the first point, those deeply rooted sentiments or what it is. And then I think the other thing is this often becomes self-perpetuating. So it is quite challenging to be the first woman in a workplace. I remember when I started, it really is like that first woman is very, very brave, because you will feel, if you are the first woman or one among few, you will feel a bit like an outsider. You will feel different. And you're not different, you're a human being, but nonetheless, you will feel different, and you may be perceived different, and you will often be treated differently. And so there's some very real obstacles there. I remember one of the first jobs I had, it's many, many years ago, it's 30 years ago in the Commission, And I started in a DG that was very male-dominated. Most DGs were at the time, but this one was very male-dominated. And there was one female head of unit. And one of my very first days in the office, she was very nice. She walked past me in the corridor and she stopped and she said, "Listen, this is pretty much a boys' club, but don't worry about it. They're okay." Okay. And it was just such a nice, encouraging, simple message from the one female manager in the DG, just to say, "Don't worry." Exactly. And I thought it was a very kind gesture, very, very friendly, in a very simple way. But it kind of was okay. I can do this. No, she gave that message. Yes. And she must have, if I think back now, she was literally the only female manager among many. So yeah, exactly. So she was very, very impressive. And so I think we need, and that is maybe then a third point. No, we need more. We need women yes, we need references. We need role models. We need women to encourage and step in for each other and help each other, which is one reason I really like your project and your W factor. I think it's such an important thing that we bring these issues out there and reflect together and talk about.
Women in the energy sector are underrepresented, unfortunately, as of today. There is now a big sentiment that something should be done to balance the presence of women in the energy sector. We at FSR are doing something in our what is possible in our conditions. What is the European Commission doing on this?
So specifically in the energy sector and here in DG Energy, we have set up an equality network. It's both about gender equality, but it's also about other aspects of equality. And we've got this really excellent and very, very nice group of colleagues who are super committed, engaged, and really bringing this process forward, working with women and men who work in the energy sector, who work in all different, whether it's industry or academia or other parts. And so really to identify the issues and what can we do. What's quite interesting at the moment in European energy policy is that we have a female commissioner, Kadri Simpson, we have a female president, Ursula von der Leyen, and I'm here as a Director General in DG Energy, and so we actually have quite a strong female representation. I was yesterday speaking at an event, sitting in a panel, and there was one man and 4 women, sorry. And so I think we do see a change, and that's of course only at some levels and in some contexts, but I do hope that sends a signal to the sector more widely that this is possible and you can, it's a good place to work, it's an interesting place to work. Yeah.
Yes, that's great. As I was saying, at Florence School, we are trying to tackle this issue. Particularly, you mentioned panels, and we really do not want to see any longer these manuals where you have basically 5 or 6 or more only men. So in order to do this, for example, we are launching now the Energybase. It's a database for female energy experts, and we hope that this contribution will help moving forward in the direction that you just mentioned.
It's such a nice, it's such a good idea, it's such a good initiative, and I can tell you we have a lot of good female experts here in DG Energy, so they can join your lineup, I hope.
With pleasure.
Great.
That's good. I would like to conclude with a message of encouragement from your side. So if you have to tell a young lady who wants to engage in the energy sector and becoming an energy expert one day, what would be your recommendation? What would you like to tell her?
I think I would, first of all, I would encourage them, because hopefully there are many women who would like to join the energy sector and make a difference here. So I would tell them, please do join. It is such an interesting area to work in. It's a field, the energy field, energy policy, what we do on energy is central to our societies. It's central to people having heating and electricity that are necessary parts of life. But it's central to our economies, it's central to fairness, it's central to our competitiveness. It really is essential to our fight against the climate crisis, because we have to change our energy systems in order to be able to meet those objectives. So it is a sector that is so important, And for that reason, we need both men and women, and we need more women, because I think the energy sector has been a bit slower in reaching the balance compared to some other sectors. So there's a lot of need for women to join. So I would encourage them to join and be part of this really fascinating and inspiring area of work. And I would encourage them to come make a change. And I would encourage them to make the change by being who they are again, to come back to what is the W factor, what is it that we bring ourselves. And so hopefully young women will join the sector, whether that's in industry or in public administration or in regulators or agencies, in bringing who they are and what they bring as themselves, in order for us to get the best results together, to get all the different ideas together, to get the different skills together, to achieve the best possible results.
Great. It's a great message. Thank you very much. And definitely there's a need for this encouragement, we feel. So
yes.
Thank you very much, Ditte, for this fantastic interview, and really all the best. Good luck with the upcoming months. We know they will be quite intensive. So good luck to you and all your colleagues, and thanks very much for your work.
Thank you very much, Ilaria, for coming to see me. It was really nice to chat to you. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks.